welcome to the Mill. My name is Dawn and I'm joined by Freya.
Yeah, hi everybody. Lovely to be here. Lovely to see you.
So today we're doing a birthday special for our chaotic and clarity moments.
We are indeed.
Yes.
It is a special birthday one because we're both April birthdays.
We are both Aries.
Which is amazing.
We're the best.
Yeah, strong, forceful leaders.
Yeah. It's the first star sign
the first
in the
star
zodiac,
sign.
isn't it?
Indeed, yeah.
Yes, it is. I love it. But anyway, enough about that. So my chaotic moment recently, my birthday last week, we went for a lovely walk up a mountain that my lovely husband had already done a recce on 2 days before.
Beautiful.
Because he knows I don't like certain
Surprises,
places and
yeah.
surprises. I don't like big hills. I don't like edges. God, I'm a nightmare. Bless him. So we did a recce on this lovely walk back at Dog Arrock somewhere. And he was like, Dawn, you're going to love it. This pool's at the top. I was like, yeah, brilliant. But obviously his safe versus my safe is very different because when we were doing the walk, yeah, I was literally scrambling on all fours at one point and there was a big drop down the side. And yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't tell him. He'll know now when he's editing this podcast. But I was literally so scared the whole time. My anxiety, the overthinking, it got so bad that I actually started thinking, what do we do if a brown bear comes? Yeah.
Real chaotic birthday moment.
Very, very chaotic birthday moment.
Yeah.
But it's okay. He's trained in brown, but he's bear trained. I don't know what that means.
I'm glad.
So I was right, okay. So anyway, that was fine. It was obviously a really lovely day. But then to balance out the chaos, when we came home, he bought me some new headphones and I went in my greenhouse and I did some more seeds and I just chilled and I was like, oh, so that was definitely the clarity.
What a beautiful moment of clarity.
Oh, it was lovely. It was lovely. And I couldn't hear anything apart from music. And yeah, it was hot in the greenhouse and there was just like lots of lovely things.
I love a greenhouse.
I love a greenhouse.
My greenhouse is definitely one of my safe places.
Oh, I know. You go for a sleep in a greenhouse.
I'm
gardening.
Really
want to do that. Gardening. Sorry, you're gardening in your greenhouse.
Yeah, napping with the dog.
So Freya, tell us your chaotic.
Yeah, so my chaotic clarity birthday moment was, I think sometimes when you have birthdays, there can be that pressure to see everybody, do everything, make sure, have you seen all the family? Have you seen all your friends? Have you done everything that you need to do? Have you made the most of the day? And that can feel quite a lot of pressure for people. So sometimes I can kind of get a little bit in my head about that. I think, in kind of sort of the days leading up to my birthday, I was sort of feeling a little bit chaotic about making sure I could fit everything in. Who would I not see? Am I leaving anybody out? All of those kind of chaotic feelings. And actually, I kind of thought to myself, do you know what? I just need to, I suppose, take a step back, be kind to myself and think about, okay, what do I really want to do on my birthday? So it was a moment of sort of clarity of thinking, okay, well, I really need to see my parents. I want to spend time with them. I wanted to spend time with Dawn, so Dawn made the birthday list.
I made it.
And she also did my hair, which was amazing.
Yes, had hair done.
And then I also spent some time with my husband Rick as well. So I kind of got to do all those wonderful things that I wanted to do, spend time with people who are really important to me. But also what I wanted to do is make sure that I didn't leave out people who I love spending time with. So I've now got things booked in with those really important people throughout April. So it doesn't feel all pressure on one day. It's not as much chaos. It's much more clarity, and you can get to spend time with those people. And actually, I always feel like I feel it's much better to spend time one-on-one with people. I can kind of feel overwhelmed in a group sometimes, or you can kind of feel a bit lost. Whereas actually, when you have that one-to-one time with somebody, it can be really special. And so, looking forward to it. If you're booked in to see me over the next few weeks, I'm super excited about seeing you.
And you're one of the lucky ones.
Or the unlucky ones, depending which way you kind of cut it.
Definitely a lucky one. And also, you were going to America just after. So
that was a
lot, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. April has been busy.
It has.
But exciting as well. So it's always a little bit of chaos, and it's always a little bit of clarity with those, as you know.
So today's episode, Freya, is about executive functioning.
I'm so excited to talk about this today.
Yeah. So to someone like me who thinks they know and they know bits about it from a psychological point of view, tell us, what is executive functioning?
So first of all, I'm just going to say executive functioning is quite a complex thing to get our heads around.
Yeah.
And because I'm neurodivergent, sometimes my executive function isn't going to work perfectly. So I have got notes in front of me. So sometimes I'm going to be looking down, and that's because I really want to make sure I get everything right for, you know, for our listeners and our watchers, and really go through those things. But also apologies if you do see me looking down. So one of the first things that's involved with executive functioning is our working memory. Okay, so our working memory, I always think as that kind of almost like that real short-term piece of memory. So it might be, for example, if I'm giving you a phone number to remember, so 578-145 or whatever, your short-term memory, you know, or your working memory, sorry, will be able to remember that and hold that whilst you write it down. But once you've written it down, it'll kind of go. It doesn't need to stay in that working memory long. If you want to kind of remember it for longer, that's when you rehearse it and it goes into your short-term memory. But your working memory is just that kind of that holding space. So again, it's like a little bit like if you're doing mental arithmetic, which I am absolutely rubbish at. If somebody says, you know, if you've got 5 apples and somebody eats 3, how many have you got left? Your working memory is the bit that holds onto those things and kind of thinks, okay, what, and works all of those bits out. Another part of your executive functioning is your cognitive flexibility. Okay, and the reason I'm doing this a lot is because that's where your executive functioning sits. It sits in that frontal lobe part of your brain. And your cognitive flexibility is, I suppose, how you are able to respond to changes around you. So again, neurotypical people usually isn't a problem for neurodivergent people. Our cognitive flexibility can sometimes be a bit tricky. So that, for example, might be, and this is just a really easy example, you go to a restaurant because you've been really thinking about, you know, having your favorite meal that you always go to at your favorite restaurant. You get there and your restaurant has changed the menu. Yeah, it's that cognitive flexibility where you're expecting to do something, but now you've got to do something different. Another example I always think of cognitive flexibility is you're planning on having a quiet day at home and a friend pops around unannounced. You know, your brain's got to suddenly start to shift and change gears. Yeah. Another part of executive functioning is our ability to control our inhibitions. Okay, so that's kind of an inhibitory response. So say like sometimes we want to say something that might be a little bit rude, a little bit funny, a little bit weird. And sometimes in those situations, our executive functioning will kind of shut that down for us and go, do you know what, that's maybe not quite the appropriate thing. Sometimes, you know, for neurodivergent people, you can see how that doesn't always work well. We don't quite get quick enough to our stop and think.
I am known to do that. I have been told off numerous occasions for saying inappropriate things.
And it's again,
that's why.
It's because your brain is working really, really well at kind of coming up with the ideas, but the frontal lobe part, executive function, isn't doing quite a great job of kind of like putting the fence down and going, oh, maybe let's not do or say that thing. The next part is planning and organization. So that's your ability to see a big goal in the kind of the future, but kind of thinking about how you're going to break down all the steps to get to that. And I know you've got a really good example, which is much better than my example. So go on, do you want to talk about that when you're saying though you've got an appointment that you know you need to arrange?
Oh gosh.
But what are all the, you know, what?
Yeah, we were literally talking about this before, weren't we? So where I struggle is I know what I need to do, and I know where I need to get.
Yeah.
Because it could be a very important hospital appointment.
Yeah.
It could be I've got toothache. It could be anything.
Yeah.
But it's the middle bit of how do I not get there physically driving there? How do I manage to, who do I ring? What do I ask for? You know, like millions of questions, that jelly bit in the middle, but I know what I want doing, but I don't quite know how to do the ABC to get to the Z. Yeah.
And that, I think for me, that how I think about that jelly bit, which I think is a wonderful description, is that sequencing. So which bit do I need to do first? You know, do I need to, if I'm thinking about making the appointment, do I need to ring this person first? Or do I need to ring that person first? Do I need to organise parking? All of those bits. Yeah. But I think the jelly bit in the middle is the most wonderful description I've ever heard of that kind of struggling. It feels exactly like jelly. Yeah. Messy and just all over the place.
Sinking. You know, just like weird.
Yeah, it's not tangible and concrete.
No,
no, exactly. I really like that one. Another part of it is self-monitoring. Okay, so that's our executive functioning when we're checking up on kind of what we're doing, we're evaluating our own performance, and we're kind of checking in with that. So if you think about that from a neurodivergent perspective, sometimes that can lead to overthinking, like checking in afterwards. Did I do okay? Did everyone else think I did okay? oh gosh, did I say the right thing? Did I say the wrong thing? So sometimes we can struggle with doing that, and that becomes an overthinking. Whereas maybe a neurotypical person might do that much easier and quicker. So it's that sort of self-monitoring and thinking about, okay, did I do a good job? Did I do a bad job? Where am I kind of at with that? And also, if you're a neurodivergent person, a lot of the time you might have had people who have said, oh, you've done something wrong, you've done something wrong, you've done something wrong, you've had that negative feedback.
Yeah.
So that can become our own voice as well. So I suppose for me, that's a bit of a combination of our psychological stuff that's going on, but also our executive functioning. Okay, and then finally is our emotional regulation. Which I know you and I talk about a lot.
Yeah.
So our frontal lobe and our executive functioning is part of our emotional regulation. And we both know as neurodivergent individuals, we have big emotions.
Yes, very big, aren't they? So why is that then? Like, why is there's some people like myself, obviously I can't speak for you, I struggle with the emotional regulation. So if I'm like a bit upset, it's the end of the world upset.
Yeah.
Or if I'm happy, I could cry. I get so happy. They're always like huge. And so is that again executive functioning?
Yeah, exactly, Dawn. Yeah. So that's sitting within your executive functioning. So if you imagine sort of like a graph, just as you were describing, whereas, you might have a neurotypical brain that kind of goes, okay, this is okay, and kind of like this, you can kind of see those little kind of waves of different emotions. Neurodivergent brains are much more likely, because of those differences in those executive functioning, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever felt in my life. This is a really big emotion that I'm feeling almost overwhelmed by. And then, actually, oh no, this is the saddest I've ever been. This is so overwhelming. But also the flip side of that is, this is the most excited, amazing, wonderful thing that I've ever felt. So if it's a negative emotion, sometimes that can feel really overwhelming. But if it's a positive emotion, again, I think that's a real gift that not everybody gets to experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how would you advise people then on how to, is there a way that we can kind of control or learn to control that, I suppose, somehow, especially with the negative? The positive is fine, it can be as high as it wants, but
so there's lots of different ways of thinking about this. One of the strategies that I like to think about is something called the zones of regulation. So people may have heard of this or seen of this. And what this does is, so the zones of regulation, it was created by an occupational therapist. And what they did is they thought, rather than seeing emotions as kind of good or bad, they just saw them as layers of intensity. And trying to help people get their heads around those intensity levels. So if you think about this, they talk about the emotional regulation or the zones of regulation in 4 different stages. So you have blue, which is kind of under-regulated. You're kind of like sleepy, you're tired, you're kind of, it's like that kind of like low level. So that's where blue is. So it could be, sad, but not necessarily depressed, but just kind of like low arousal. Okay? Your green is your emotions, where you're kind of like engaged. It's your go. It's at your best. You're kind of, everything around you is kind of fitting in. You're at that level. Your yellow is when you begin to move off your baseline. So you begin to become, your emotions become, a little bit dysregulated. You have that different over arousal state. So that yellow might be a little bit anxious. Like the bear that was following you.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be a little bit excited because you're going somewhere new and it's really positive. It could even be a little bit angry and annoyed. So it's when you're moving off your baseline. So, but it's recognizing that level of intensity in yourself. So it might be that your heart starts beating faster. It might be that you start feeling, I don't know, a little bit lightheaded. So you're noticing that you're off your baseline. You're not off your green go zone. And then we move into red. And red zone is kind of like, what I always think about is when you're either at meltdown, you're at shutdown, when you're at that kind of overwhelm. So your emotional arousal level is super, super high. And that's when you're executive functioning, and that, what we were talking about before with self-monitoring, and your inhibition control, all of those things, they've all gone, they've all gone to hell in a handcart. We haven't got any of those anymore. So when we're at that real level of kind of like that red level, that's when we might do things that we regret, or we might do things that are, hurtful to those around us, because we're not actually thinking them through. They're kind of like very much, automatic. And one of the reasons I love the zones of regulation to think about in my head is, one is it doesn't make them good or bad. So it doesn't sort of say, oh, the red is a bad zone, so you should never be there. It's like, actually, we all feel red sometimes. There's not a human being alive who hasn't felt all of those different, 4 colors of intensities of emotions. So go on.
Oh no, nothing. Sorry, I was just coughing. I didn't want to interrupt you. Sorry.
And I was just thinking about those 4 colours. It can be really helpful for us to think about, how you can then use those to start to talk to people around you. So, how are you feeling? Say, I'm in my green zone. I am good to go.
Yeah.
I am great. Let's just crack on and do that. Or do you know what? I'm in my yellow zone.
Yeah. Back off.
Yeah. Don't.
This is a warning.
Yeah, this is a warning. Don't. I'm starting to feel irritated. So, I need some time on my own.
Yeah.
I need to go. We need to go to our greenhouses.
Yeah.
Or do you know what? I'm feeling really blue. I'm feeling really undermotivated. Maybe I need to put on my favourite song to motivate me, to get me going. Yeah, to kind of get those energy levels.
Yeah.
And those things for me. So if I'm thinking about emotional regulation, those are some really kind of concrete ideas that you can do and you can discuss with people that kind of can help share that kind of feeling. One of my favourite things was a young person I used to work with who used the zones of regulation to describe themselves and think about themselves and really come to. He was absolutely obsessed with ballroom dancing, which I think is wonderful.
Yes.
So his blue zone was the rumba because it was a slow dance.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I can't remember what his green one was, but I know his yellow one was a foxtrot because it's a little bit quick and it's a little bit on your toes and you got to keep you on your toes. Yeah. And then the red one was the paso doble.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I know. I was thinking, what's she going to say for the red?
Yeah. And what an absolutely a wonderful way of helping people understand the intensity of your emotions when you're feeling them in a particular way.
What a great way of him being able to like visualize.
Yeah.
In his own way of
and understanding them. So I suppose that for me is a little bit about emotional regulation. The other thing that obviously we've talked a little bit today is about our executive function that's involved in things with planning, organisation. So I think it'd be really useful, Dawn, for you to tell us a little bit, because I know you're really good at planning. It's one of your kind of skills, and it's possibly not one of my skills at all. So this is where I'm going to be more chaotic, and I know you're going to be more clarity. So
I don't know. See, I find my planning quite chaotic.
Okay, go on.
Which is funny that you should say you think of me the opposite, because that's really nice. Because I think it's really chaotic, but I just love planning.
Yeah,
I love it. Well, I don't function without it. With a list, obviously, like I love a list. I'm always talking about lists, and I have like lists on my phone, like obviously phone lists, digital lists. That's the word I was looking for. But I actually have certain lists that are linked with Steve, certain lists that are linked with Millie for work, like cancellation lists and stuff. I just couldn't function without a list, to be honest. But do you know what I was going to want to talk to you about? I'm really into the spiky profile as well and that's executive functioning as well. That's kind of a bit of, it shows that neurodivergent people actually have extreme strengths in certain things as well as weaknesses and other things, rather than like the neurotypical that are just good and bad equally at each.
Yeah, and I love that term. Yeah, you said spiky profile. I think that's it's such a real good way of describing how a neurotypical or neurodivergent brain might work. So, for example, you might have somebody who is really struggling with organisation. So they might not be able to, manage how to kind of like, run a household, keep their things tidy, arrive on things in a timely manner, all of those things, but actually get them to write a book or draw a picture, and they're going to be one of the most creative people, in the whole world. So sometimes it can be that the skills are different, but also you can have a spiky profile within one skill. Yeah. If that makes sense. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a weird example. Yes. It's a personal example. Mm-hmm. So when I was at university doing my clinical psychology degree, I was the first time I ever had kind of like my feedback from a supervisor, that you kind of get a form that says, clinical skills, report writing skills, all of those things. And you're kind of graded on, below expected, at the expected level, or exceeding the expected level. And I was really excited to tell my husband, Rick, and show him that my supervisor had rated organisation as exceeds the level, and had written underneath it that Freya is one of the most organised students she's ever worked with. To which point my husband replied, who are you at work? Who is this person? Who do you turn into when you leave the house? Because at home, I am one of the most disorganized people. So for me, that's within one skill, my sort of spiky profile. Is at work, I can be extremely organized and kind of, know what I'm doing, follow through, complete deadlines. at home. It feels like all my organization sort of like energy is there, and that I've got none of it left.
Yeah,
when I
it's
come
like
home,
melted through you in work, and then it's like gone.
Yes.
So you like get home empty of organisation. Yeah.
Have you got anything in your experience, Dawn, that you think about in your spiky profile, or things that people talk to you about?
Yeah, there's loads really, but like with organising in work, I am extremely organised. A bit like you actually. Like everything is just everything's got a home. Like even mixing up the colours with my clients' information, everything. I've got data collecting on everything. So everything. And if something's out, it's really uncomfortable for me. So, and I think at home as well, I'm very organised in the house. But then maybe outside of the house, I mean, I've got about 10 projects going on out there. I started bricking a path last night. Nice. Because why not? And then obviously I got bored, and I was like, oh my God, I've not eaten since breakfast. So then I had to go and make tea for everybody, and then it's just left half full. Obviously we've got half fencing ready for the lambs. I've got a caravan over there. So actually, in the garden, it's low. There's no organisation right now.
Yeah.
But maybe in work and home, it's very organised. So yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of spiky profiles around those.
Spiky profiles, definitely.
And I think timekeeping kind of really relates into executive functioning. So is timekeeping something you struggle with, Dawn, or is timekeeping something you find quite easy? Go on, tell us a little bit about that.
So I actually think that I'm okay with timekeeping.
Okay.
When I was younger, it wasn't great. But as I've got older, it's actually really good. So I think, what's changed? But it's actually my coping. I've had to change a lot.
Yeah.
Because I've realised that when I get to work half an hour before anybody else, I really like it. I go and get a coffee from the shop, and I sit and I'll open my laptop and I'll do stuff. And it's just like really chilled. I was like, this is nice. And then my client will walk in and like, morning. And it's just, I have a really lovely morning and a really lovely day.
Yeah.
Versus maybe 10, 15 years ago, running in to the salon, there's a queue of people outside, and I'm only like 3 minutes late.
Yeah.
But if someone's appointment's 10 o'clock and I'm getting there at 5 past, that's not okay, is it? And it used to stress me out for the rest of the day. And I don't know why it took me that many years, but it took me that long to figure out, get there earlier. And also I changed my working hours. So I don't start until 11 now, or 10.
Well, do you know what? I absolutely love that as a strategy. So I think that is just beautiful, because I think we can get into our kind of mindsets that we have to do things on a certain schedule. So, executive functioning, everyone else starts at 9 a.m. I have to start at 9 a.m. because that's what the world does.
Yep.
What you've done beautifully, and I think this is just amazing, is gone, I'm not a 9 a.m. starter.
No.
I'm never going to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
It's, if I'm a square peg constantly trying to fit into a round hole, I'm going to break myself.
Yeah.
But if I create my own, I'm a square peg and I create my own square hole. So starting at 11, I think that is a wonderful tip.
Yeah.
If anybody can take anything from today's executive functioning podcast,
start work later.
Or think about, use the strategy that is to you. So, don't constantly try to do something that you're always going to fail at.
I know.
It's going to make you're going to rush, like you were saying, you're going to fail at, which is going to impact your self-esteem. Start later, so you can then get your own way into the day.
Yeah.
And then
we do the same hours. We just work later. We work till 7, 8, sometimes 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But we don't start till 11, and that actually suits all of the girls in work.
Yeah.
And also, if it didn't, they can do whatever hours they want, because I'm a big believer that in the workspace, there should be flexibility. As long as the work's getting done, doesn't matter what hours it's getting done at, does it?
Yeah, I think sometimes we get really caught up in doing things the way they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the biggest takeaways, I think, when we're thinking about executive functioning, is actually stepping away from how it should be and accepting actually we can do things differently.
Well, the word should means other people's perspective.
It does.
And this is our life and not theirs, and we do what suits us.
We can should all over ourselves, and it creates problems in our lives. So we're not we're going to stop shoulding, and we're going to think about, okay, what works for me. And I think that is if we think about things in our lives, always think about, actually why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I think I should, or am I doing this because I have to?
Mm-hmm.
And then have that conversation with yourself, because then that will allow you to go, do you know, I'm going to start at 11, which means you can get there at 10:30, have your gradual day in, your you're emotional regulated.
I know.
Because you've done it.
I know.
You know?
Do you know what's really ironic, right? Is I don't start till 11 and I'm there at 9. I get there at 9 and I go for a coffee. Sometimes I walk along the prom. I'll do sometimes work on podcasts or my homework or whatever. And I'm still there like an hour and a half earlier. But if I was to start at 9, I wouldn't be there till 10 past. It's weird, isn't it?
It's working with your brain and not against it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, so many of us need to learn that, you know, that strategy.
Yeah.
You know, things like, so, you know, if we're thinking about like working memory as well, I think for a long time, I would have always tried to think about, okay, well, I'll just remember that. You know, I'll put it in my working memory. I'll just remember that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't remember that. It would go and it would be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
So I think another thing for me, sort of a little tip about executive functioning with all of those kind of planning and working memory is, if you see it and you think it needs doing or you need to remember it, either write it down or do it now.
Yeah.
Because you won't come back to it later, because your executive functioning won't remind you.
No.
So again, it's another way of just thinking, okay, rather than doing maybe what everyone else might be doing around you, is doing something different that really works well for you.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's brilliant. My son has to carry a little notebook around in school, actually. It's just you've just triggered my memory of that, because he really struggles with his working memory, really struggles. So he has to write everything down. He used to do voice memos before, but they're not allowed their phone in school. So that's fine. So he's got a notepad, and it can be the smallest thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's changed his life. That sounds ridiculous.
No, it doesn't.
But he goes through his notepad and he remembers what time he has to be there tomorrow for certain. Yeah.
It's externalizing his executive functioning. So rather than having your executive functioning in your head doing it, if you haven't got that ability, don't feel bad about it. Just have an external source of it. So, you know, you've got those prompters, those reminders, alarms on phones. You know, again, that's another amazing strategy for.
There's always an alarm going off in a phone. PE bag. Don't forget to take your book into school.
Yeah. I would say a quick tip about alarms is always label them. Because again, you might think your executive functioning will be like, do you know what? I'll remember why I've set this alarm to go off.
Yeah.
And then when the alarm goes off, you're like, oh, I have no idea what this was about.
For? Yeah.
So always label your alarms. That's always a really useful thing. And I suppose the only quick thing that I thought would be really useful to explore as part of this is that cognitive flexibility.
Yes.
Because I think for me, that's often something that isn't always thought about and is that part of our executive functioning.
Yeah.
But actually we know that kind of change can unsettle us all. Don't go on, tell us a little bit about sometimes how change kind of impacts you physically. How does it make you feel? What kind of goes on if there's a surprise that you're not ready for?
Yeah, so it depends, because I think I'm quite flexible with certain things, because I like last minute changes, and you know, like if it's let's go out for tea,
so if it's exciting.
But if I've actually had too much time to think about something, I play a movie in my head, Freya.
Okay.
Like, do we all do that? Like,
I don't know.
Yeah, do we all do that? So I'll play a movie in my head, like last week. Oh, I want to blah, 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 and I want to go there. Oh, no, I don't want to do it. And I was like this, and Steve said, darling, tell me what you're seeing in your head. And I said, what I'm seeing is fried chicken and a margarita.
Oh.
And he said, then let's do it. So we actually found the restaurant that did that. But also, if I'd have gone there and it was full, it does get me a bit panicky, because I don't know what I'm going to do. So then I try not to commit to the movie too much, because I can actually go in a mood. In a mood, like a child. So I don't know, work that one out.
No, I think it's because your kind of your executive function is expecting something.
Yes.
So you're expecting it, you're ready for it, and then that feeling of disappointment when you don't have it is kind of overwhelming. And I think sometimes that can make us feel almost a bit spoiled. So then we can add layers of guilt and shame onto that.
Because I'm thinking, why am I being like this? Like, you're a grown woman.
Exactly, yeah. So not only were you feeling the primary emotion of the disappointment, we then layer on a secondary emotion of guilt and shame. Crikey, I shouldn't be feeling bad about this, but I am feeling bad. So I think, and I probably say this far too many times, but I don't think I'll ever say it enough, actually. We need to be kinder to ourselves.
Yeah.
So, if we have that primary emotion of, God, I'm really disappointed that I can't have my margarita and fried chicken, if I'm really disappointed, then I can just be okay being disappointed, rather than layering on, oh God, I should be feeling ashamed that I'm disappointed about something that's so difficult, So kind of thinking about those things can be really helpful. And I think it always feels like a useful piece of advice is be kind to yourself as if you would be kind to your best friend. If a best friend said to me, God, I feel really disappointed I couldn't have, if you said to me, oh, I felt really disappointed, I'd be like, I could get that done, I would be disappointed too, rather than thinking, I would never dream of saying to you, well, that was awful. You shouldn't have felt like that.
You should
feel ashamed.
Yes, you'd be ashamed of yourself
for feeling that way. You're spoiled. Yeah. We would never talk to each other like that. We would never talk to our friends like that.
No.
But often we talk to ourselves like that. So sometimes it's just, being our own best friend, being our own kindness. And recognizing, that our executive functioning is going to be different. And for those of you who've got people in your lives who have executive functioning issues, that they're not being lazy, they're not being spoiled, they're not being difficult. And I know sometimes how frustrating it can be.
So do I have children who also have similar. I know how frustrating and hard that it can be dealing with people like myself and my children.
And it can also be frustrating for us as well,
because we don't want to feel like this, do we?
We don't. And I think as well, we can sometimes get caught up in those ideas of, oh, do you know, I can override my executive function with just grit and determination. But then realise I probably can't.
And you think, how's that working out then? Well, not great.
It was a bit touch and go for a second. But if you've got any kind of issues, or if you want to talk if you want to write any of in the comments below about your strengths in your executive functioning or your struggles, I want to share those with us and our community, please pop those in the comments below.
We'd love that, wouldn't we? We'd love some questions.
Yeah, we would. So tell us about anything else you'd like Dawn and I to talk about, or any of these little topics that we've talked about today that you'd like us to expand more upon. We will see you next time for another amazing topic. As always, we've loved having you with us. I've learned so much, as always, again.
I always learn from you, Freya. Always.
And if you'd like to like and subscribe. Goodbye from the mill today.
Bye. See you next time. Bye.